I grew up fishing with my dad, and as adults, there's a lot we don't agree on. It's a lot of subjects we can't talk about, but when we go fishing together, none of that matters. It's all about that adventure of the day. We're on an adventure together, we have a mission to accomplish, and just all that stuff gets thrown out, and it's just special.
You're listening to the Rising Tidecast, the podcast for sharing the stories, the lessons, and all the good stuff from legends in the marine industry. Welcome to another episode of the Rising Tidecast. I'm Steve from Rising Tide Film, and today I am super excited to have Stephanie Vatalaro, who's the Senior VP of Strategy and Operations at Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation, also known as RBFF. Stephanie's been in the industry for 18 years. She has a real passion for the industry, connecting people to the water, and encouraging conservation and growing our industry in general. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Super excited to have you on. And I've actually had the privilege of working with Stephanie as my mentor earlier this year through an amazing program that Marine Marketers of America put on for a mentorship program. You've been so valuable for my growth personally and professionally earlier this year. So I'm really excited to have you on. And what I would love to know is where it all started for you. Take me back. Why ocean and fishing? When did it come into your life?
Well, I was born in Ohio, in the United States, and to a water-loving family. My grandparents kept a trailer up at Lake Erie. They had a place in a town called Port Clinton. So, I get asked sometimes, well, what was the first fish you ever caught? Do you remember your first time fishing? I honestly don't, because I was probably 3 years old. But, fast forward a few years, and my parents decided to move to the Florida Keys when I was 7. So that was a big change, big move, but it really, really shaped my life and influenced me to work in this field and just really become a steward of the water and all things boating and fishing.
The Keys is a very special place. That would be awesome to grow up. It's something we've always considered, like Maddie being from Sydney, going back to live in America again, the Keys are on her top of her bucket list, I'd say.
It's beautiful.
I know it would be a very interesting place to live.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things I think when you're a kid, you don't necessarily realize it's special because it's all you know, right? So my friends would be my family in Ohio would be like, oh, do you boat all day? And I'm like, no, I go to school and I do my homework and I have activities after school, all the normal things, right? But then when I left for college and I started meeting other people and talking about our experiences, I kind of went, oh, yeah, that was special. And I just have a different experience and knowledge of, the ocean and fish species and things that a lot of people don't have familiarity with. So it was pretty unique. And everyone asks me now, I don't live there now. I'm like, why are you not there? It is a very small town, and I really enjoyed being somewhere. I'm in the DC area now, Washington, DC area. I've enjoyed being somewhere where I can get to the city or the beach or the mountains to experience it all. But it is a really, really special little place in the world, and I enjoy going back very much.
When I grew up, that was one of the trips I used to do every year with my dad is we would book a charter down out of Almirada or somewhere else down there. It was awesome. Very, very cool. So then growing up in the Keys, what happened before recreational boating and fishing? And then how did you find them?
I didn't know I wanted to work in the industry. That wasn't a plan of mine. I came out of school. I went to Florida State University. I studied media and communications. And I started out working in PR and doing media relations, marketing, communications. And I think if you look at the fishing participation trends, it's pretty normal that kids who, even if you grow up fishing and boating, there's a period of your life where you kind of get away from it. College takes over, you're becoming an independent adult, and it just sort of slips off the radar. And then you tend to come back into it when you start family and stuff like that. So I got out of school, worked for a little while in Georgia, ended up making my way up to the DC area. And when I met my now husband, he had grown up on the water as well. And he wanted to buy a big boat. And I guess this hadn't gone over very well with some other girlfriends because he had said it and they were kind of like, I don't know. So he says it was a turning point in our relationship when he's like, I want to buy this big boat. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And then I was like, and I'll pay for the gas. And he's like, oh, will you marry me?
Tick, tick, tick. Yeah.
So we had this 1979 32-foot aluminum cabin cruiser. It's called Marinette. And, I think it's probably fair to say most people start with a small boat and they get bigger. And we just bought this big boat. And in our 20s, we spent our weekends on it. It was such a blast. We would take friends out overnight. We did all the work on it. We changed manifolds in the engines and all that stuff. So anyhow, he found a job at Boat US, heard of this little organization called RBFF. And I was working, doing marketing and communications at the time, and referred me. And I ended up getting the job. And it was kind of a no-brainer, and I'm like, okay, this will be the first time in my career I've had a chance to work on something I actually personally enjoy. And here I am 18 years later. So that worked.
That I'd say so. That's awesome. I love that you just were all of a sudden, without knowing it, ticking every box of that relationship. And what a start. A lot of lessons I'm sure learned. Sounds like changing manifolds is probably one of the relationship testers, perhaps, but
It's like putting IKEA furniture together, right?
that's right. I mean, to me, you've been in it now for 18 years with RBFF. That screams passion and dedication. And, I'd imagine you wouldn't stick with something that long unless you really loved it. And, you said when you started, it just, felt right doing something that you love to do. So what is it about what you do now that keeps that passion going?
So the fishing and the boating, obviously, they're things that I love personally and we engage in as a family regularly. But the other thing I think that keeps me going in this industry, it's large, but it's small. And there's a lot of the same key players. It's a lot about relationships and people. And I love, love, love doing the networking and the connecting. And, it almost feels like when you go to events, it's like a family reunion. You're seeing your friends. Oh, I haven't seen you since last year. What's been going on? Da, 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 da. I love that part of it. And I feel like it's a big piece of our industry and getting ahead, right? You need to know the right people to be able to pull the right strings and make the right moves.
Yeah. That's something that you actually helped me a lot with during our mentorship sessions. It was, I think, the power of networking is what we spoke about and how it also shaped your career. And I remember you told me it was one of the first things that we spoke about, and it helped me a lot because I do find it a bit harder to network on my own. I'm not a natural networker. I like one-on-one conversations and situations a bit better. But you kind of resonated with that and told me how that was kind of one of the first things that you had to do in your role, just kind of get out there. So I think you gave me a lot of great tips and it played such a big role in what you do. Can you share, I guess, what that experience was like for you at the beginning and the difference that networking in general makes in your career back then and now?
So I wasn't always somebody who was, known in the industry. In fact, I think it was 2019, so not that long ago. My then president and CEO was like, he wanted to put me in a leadership role. And he's like, you're going to need to get to know the board. You're going to need to get to know the industry and all of our stakeholders better. And, going to events, I spent a whole year traveling to like every event you can think of. I think I had 17 events in one year. It's a lot to remember. It's a lot to take in. So I was like, okay, there has to be like touch points in between. No way I'm going to remember all these names, remember all these faces, etc. So I just started, instead of collecting business cards, or I would take the business cards, go straight to LinkedIn, connect with that person. And so then they're popping up in my feed. I'm getting that, I'm seeing their face over and over. I'm seeing what they're talking about. And you can start connecting on things that are not just work, but personal also. I also made a concerted effort to post regularly myself and try to post about things that were both strategic for the organization and things that I'm very passionate about, so that I sort of had my own brand, if you will. And I don't know, you learn what resonates with people, you learn what other people are passionate about, and it started to become really fun, right? Like, I'm going to post this and let's see what kind of engagement it gets. But it also helps you tremendously. So you do go to those events and now, you know all these players, and that gets you invited to other events, and that gets you the call from the trade media that wants to talk to you about something, or it helps form a partnership. So I've just found it tremendously helpful in everything I do, really.
Even you're connecting with LinkedIn and what you post, like you post very regularly and it's all very real. Sometimes it's a hard thing to like put too much pressure on yourself to make this like epic LinkedIn post because it's the business and you have to be seen this way, right? But I mean, you kind of gave me permission. You're like, just make it real. Like you don't have to do the crazy stuff all the time because
Yeah.
it's nice that you've been building that personal brand that, since 2019 when you started doing this. When I see your posts and stuff, it's like, oh, this is actually what really happened. It doesn't have to be overly polished. Like it's just a great way to connect with you and keep up with everyone else too.
Well, thanks. I enjoy it. And I
Yeah.
enjoy following your posts as well.
Awesome. Thank you. When you got into leadership role at RBFF, you were in marketing, right? So you're senior marketing for a while, and then that's recently shifted. I'd love to know what a day in the life looks like for you now.
A day in the life. Oh my gosh, it changes. But well, there's kind of two components of what we do at RBFF. Our two major strategies are reaching consumers to get fishing and boating on their radar and helping them get started. So we have a campaign called Take Me Fishing and digital property, takemefishing.org, where we run a national marketing campaign to increase awareness of fishing and boating, give people the how to, the where to, connect them with their state so they can get their license. That's the big piece I used to oversee. On the other side, we consider kind of our B2B. It's our stakeholder focus. And we want to provide the industry, which is fishing, boating, and state agencies for us, with programs, research, materials that they can use in their own marketing outreach. So it's kind of like we have like B2B and B2C. And I don't know, I guess when I started doing all that network and stepped into the leadership role, I took a real interest in figuring out kind of what makes it all tick. And so I was looked at as someone who could step into that broader role of overseeing both of those functions. And it's been super interesting because it all does tie together. The same strategies can go across both areas, but it's fun. It's fun and rewarding. And one of the reasons I've been able to stay so long is have been able to get these new challenges every 5 years or so.
It's awesome. And it sounds like they work together, right? You can't have one without the other. And a lot of that research would help both the consumers and the businesses that you provide them with. I mean, it's awesome the work that you guys do. I'd love to talk about both of those kind of sides of the business. So the Take Me Fishing side of things, like you guys do, is it one campaign, like a national campaign a year, or is it a few? Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how do you guys decide what to do and craft those campaigns? Talk me through that process.
It's intense and it's fun. I mean,
it's a big responsibility too, right? Because it's like you representing as the agency, the whole industry, especially in the US.
Yeah. And that's how I tell people, like, that's kind of how you can view us. So our mission is to get more people fishing and boating so that we are supporting retailers, manufacturers. More people means more people are buying things, right? And they're getting their license and those dollars are going back to conservation. But the consumer campaign, I mean, it is a year-round campaign under the umbrella of Take Me Fishing. So it's one main campaign, but we use research to guide everything we do. So we look at fishing participation trends. We figure out, what target audiences are kind of that low-hanging fruit. We're not going to get the person who's a total couch potato off the couch and out on the water. But, maybe somebody who's hiking or camping but hasn't been fishing yet might have more of a propensity to go fishing or boating. So yeah, it always starts with research. We have an agency we work with out of Minnesota who does all the creative development and the media buying. It's a multifaceted campaign that has, advertising, PR, social media, all the things. Even things I don't understand anymore. I'm getting old. Technology's getting hard.
Too much to keep up with. There's always something new. Yeah.
But yeah, so we have a team here. That side of the house is 7 people. But we use contractors, of course, to extend that to make it go further.
This year was a really cool campaign that you guys did with a lot of animations and then requesting a lot of user-generated stuff. It was a broad campaign, but it was very cool. And personally, I felt really connected to it. How do you decide what to focus on? And what are some of those kind of insights that, I guess, help you narrow that focus?
That's a great question. And this current campaign is close to my heart as well. We call it Find Your Best Self on the Water. And a couple of years ago, when we were looking at participation trends, we found that women are coming in at a very, very high rate, 47% of new participants, but they also drop out at a very high rate. And what we found was they're not seeing themselves in the activity, right? They go to a tackle shop or they open a catalog and they literally don't feel like they can identify with being an angler. So we sought out to change that. And we did another research study on women who fish to find out what is it about women who fish, like what do they have that women don't? Is there something there that we can motivate folks with? And what we found out is that women who fish have greater grit, perseverance, perceived health, confidence, like all these amazing things that we all want to have, right? So we use that as an impetus for the Find Your Best Self on the Water campaign to show that, it's not just about going out there and catching a fish. It actually helps you build character and confidence and all these great, right things. And it's in just wrapped year 2. It's been very successful. Female participation has been up the last 2 years.
That's awesome. And who wouldn't want that, like for themselves or for, their friends or kids or family? Like, it's a really awesome insight that you guys took away, that you then constructed this thing that actually, I think it's making a difference, right? It's getting awareness to a really important topic that affects, so many people. So props to you guys. I love that.
Thank you. And I said that women are coming in at a high rate, 45% of new participants, but they sit at only 36% of overall participants. So it's not sticking, right? And so we take that and the successes from our campaign and then share them with our stakeholders to try to motivate them to do some of the things we're doing to get that to stick.
How do you gauge your campaigns? Is it mostly, because we talked before about a lot of this too, like the data that you guys collect is crazy detailed and in depth to like gauge the effectiveness of a campaign, which not many, I don't think, in the marine industry go to that length to collect that data, but that's nice to kind of, that you guys do that, and it's for the general industry and the population that's interested in fishing too. So how does that play out for you?
That's a great question. And I will say right up front, it is super hard to connect what we do to actual participation. So we look at it in a lot of different ways. Of course, we look at each individual channel, like if it's whatever, TikTok or Google, Yahoo, whatever that may be, and look at the performance metrics there. How many people things are reaching, how many people are like engaging with the content. But then to layer on that, we do an annual study that show people see the advertising and then they respond to say, would this motivate me to go fishing or boating? Have I seen it before, etc. It's an annual brand study that we do to evaluate the effectiveness of those advertisements.
I love that, because sometimes like the overall brand building or general campaigns that we make are so hard to measure. But I think the way that you guys do that, it's awesome. It makes a difference. It shows you're on the right track.
Yeah. And then, of course, we track participation numbers annually. We look at fishing license sales. We look at tackle sales, all are kind of indicators of what we do to see if we're moving things in the right direction.
Yeah, so many data sources make it, I'm sure, really complicated, but it also like helps you kind of prove your case that it works.
Yeah.
At RBFF, do you guys focus on, what is it, a R3 model, right? Is it recruitment, retention, reactivation?
Yep.
That sounds awesome, but what is that? And then how do you guys use it?
I'm laughing because it's one of those things that it just boils down to like good customer experience, but you put a little moniker on it and everybody goes, oh, what is that? R3.
Coin term. Yeah, something out of Star Wars almost.
Yeah. When you run a business, you want to always be thinking about how to bring people in the door. That's recruitment. You want to think how to keep them. That's retention. And if somebody leaves, you want to try to lure them back, right? That's reactivation. So it's recruitment, retention, reactivation. And the Take Me Fishing campaign that I just talked about is focused primarily around recruitment. It's getting out there and getting in front of people who haven't traditionally participated to say like, hey, you should go fishing and boating. But our efforts on the stakeholder side are a little bit more focused around retention and reactivation. And one of the reasons for that is, we as a nonprofit, we're not selling anything. So we don't have customer data. We don't have what we need to reach out to people and connect them directly in their local community, right? Whereas the state agencies can do that, local retailers can do that. So a lot of work that we do on that B2B side is around those second 2 R's, retention and reactivation.
Do you find that you guys get a lot of support from independent businesses that have a lot of pull in the industry, or is it something that you need to be independent as kind of a organization for the people in the industry?
It really varies, to be honest. We've worked with so many different companies over the years. We've partnered with some of the really big ones and really small ones. And, it just again, it really boils down to like great customer service and holding people's hand when they're there. Someone's checking out and it's like, do you have a fishing license? Do you know where you can get one? Do you know where you're going? Let me help you. There's some great spots here and there. I feel like there has been a shift in the industry over the last maybe 5 years of organizations who realize that traditional customer is kind of aging out and we have to start changing who we're going out to. We need to reach more diverse audiences who make up our population today. So that's been encouraging and hopefully we'll see more.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's a passion and a pastime that gives people so much joy. Like more people should be experiencing it, I think. Obviously with like boating too, right? This stereotypical kind of boat buyer for a lot of brands that at least I work with, they're not going to be buying many more boats because, like it's changing
Right.
and they've been in it for a while. So yeah, appealing to more diverse audience is something that's, I guess, a little bit needing to I guess have a lot more thought behind the campaigns as to how to do that. What are you guys seeing as far as the diversity? Is it the places that people are from and can go fishing, or is it age, or is it just a culmination of everything?
It's complicated. There's a lot of factors. I mean, the number one thing that we face is, as I mentioned with women, this is similar with other groups as well. They just don't see it as for them. There's this image. I always say fishing needs a makeover, right? We're not
Like
Andy
that.
Griffith anymore. But also, I think there's a lot of perceptions that people have that are not necessarily reality, but it's what they see, right? They think that fishing has to be really expensive, that you have to get up at 6 a.m. and drive 2 hours from your house and spend all day. This idea of fishing being a part of a casual family event, like a family picnic, and you bring the fishing rods, is, I feel like, not as widely talked about. And so people think that like getting into it is going to be this huge, intense financial and time commitment. So we try to break down some of those barriers too, because we all know it can be expensive. Sure. It can take all day, but you have a choice in that. It doesn't have to be that, right?
How does that tie into the other research that I thought was really cool that you guys do, the psychology of churn? How does that all play into it? Because that's something that's really important, I think, for the industry. Tell me what the study is all about.
So this was a special research report we did last year. Again, following the data and watching the trends, we track how many people come in and how many people fall out each year. And we started to see this disturbing trend where 7-8 years ago, we'd lose about 5 or 6 million people a year and started inching up. It went to 8 million. It went to 9 million. And then after following COVID, it went to 14 million. Which wasn't a
Wow.
huge surprise because a huge influx of people tried fishing and it wasn't going to stick with everybody, right?
And
But
they had less time than they did during COVID. Yeah.
but it hasn't rebounded. It came back to about 12 million lost and it has stayed at 12 million lost. So we've got this horrible downward negative trend. We're losing more and more people every year, sometimes more than we can bring in. So the board of directors was like, we need to look into this. We need to see if there's something RBFF can do to help. So we did this 4-phase research project that took us a year to really dive into the psyche of people who had lapsed from fishing or boating, people who walked away from it, and kind of like peel back those layers. We know from surveys that people always say time. I don't have time. I don't have time. I think that's kind of a BS answer, to be honest, because you make time for the things that you love, right? So there's something there about it they don't love, right? So we're trying to get to that. And got some really interesting insights. And we were able to kind of bucket the participants, these lapsed participants, into 5 different, what we call personas or personality types, if you will, and then come up with messaging that we distributed to the industry. Like, okay, if you want to try to reach this person, here's how you need to motivate them. These are the things that are going to trigger them to come back. So it's really, really interesting. If you're into data, it's a big, long report, but we have a webinar and the research report on our site.
You just combined 2 of the most powerful things, like the data insights with emotions. And like, as you know, like the best way to connect with people is talking directly to their emotions, like their emotional state, why they feel a certain way, how they're going to feel. So to have data around that and say, like, this is from the study, like to be able to, number one, I guess, have the ability to conduct a study like that is awesome. Like if every boat and fishing brand had like that at their disposal, I'm like, why did you buy this brand from a wide variety of clients? I think that would just be amazing because, I mean, from knowing what I do, like the emotional storytelling part of things is super powerful. And I know that you guys use that a lot in your campaigns that you do and the insights that you share with your clients, which is awesome.
I should say that the industry supported us in a big way. We had 5 different sponsors on this project. The industry pitched in seeing how important this was. And they knew that, if RBFF is producing it, it's going to go to everybody for free. So that's part of the model. That's how we work. Yeah.
That's great. You're for the people and the industry.
Yeah.
So how long has it been out? And then how are people using this data?
So we launched it officially in, I'm going to say September timeframe, and produced a number of different materials that people could use. Tip sheets, obviously there was a webinar to walk through all of it. We have what we call our Churn hub online where people can check that out. Brands can take it and incorporate it into their campaign. Let's try an email campaign against this demographic that fits this persona. We haven't heard any results back yet, but we've certainly heard people who were inspired by the messaging and going to plug into it. But what we're going to do as a next step is take the findings and start piloting some projects around the country this year to hit at this retention issue. And we really focused on the local community because we're up here, the 30,000 foot level. And as you know, fishing and boating both are so local. It's different watercraft, it's different fish species, different tackle, different water bodies. And so the power is really in those local communities, the retailers, the fishing clubs, the state agencies. So we want to try to facilitate some partnerships to engage locals and then create case studies that we can put out to the industry so people can replicate success.
Yeah, saying like, hey, this actually works.
Try this. Awesome. Yeah, it works.
Out of those personas, can you go through one of them with me that's maybe in the webinar? I'd love to know just a little bit about, I guess, what you found out. If you could give me an example, that'd be awesome.
One of them was all about I don't have anyone to go with. I need a fishing buddy. There's a lot of cases of folks who are older and sadly, but true, their fishing buddy has passed away or the grandkids aren't interested in going. That's a real opportunity to refer this person to a local club, or state agency events where they can find that kind of community, right?
So starting maybe if you were to, I guess, take this to your local tackle shop and they weren't doing anything like community events or something, this would be an amazing data insight for them to say, wait, we actually have these personas that are kind of shopping at our store or haven't come in a little while, can easily reach out to them and say, we've started this club, this fishing club, come meet other people in your similar kind of space.
Or they can even have a little flyer on the counter. Have you, here's your local fishing clubs. Here's, looking for a fishing buddy. They could help facilitate that.
That's so meaningful because then it not only are you providing some really valuable insights to help them get customers back into their store and get them back into fishing, but they're actually making a difference in someone's life aside from just the fact that they're going fishing and they can help them do that. They're maybe reigniting that passion or giving them an avenue to get back into it.
Yeah. And so one other that I'll bring up that's more boating focused was around affordable access. Shocking, right?
Yes.
People are like, a boat? I can't afford a boat.
Yeah.
But interestingly, there was a lot of interest in sharing opportunities. And I had an opportunity to go to a boat dealer meeting in August when this stuff was mostly final, but it hadn't been sent out yet. And I was able to talk about it a little bit. And I asked the group, this is all boat dealers in the room. I said, has anyone done any, do you rent? Do you timeshare, for lack of a better word, do a club? And they looked at me like I was crazy. But one person raised his hand and he's like, oh, I rent boats all the time. He's like, it's my sales pipeline. And he's like, I do a club. And he's like, they'll rent a boat a few times and then they're like, I think I'd like to buy a boat. So I don't know if this industry is just steeped in tradition and they don't want to break the mold, but those clubs are really catching on, like, Freedom Boat Club and some of the others. And I think we need to continue to innovate and connect with the consumer where they want to be seen. We have to think about those things.
That's right. And the beauty of clubs like that, number one, it's like easy to get into, like not a huge financial commitment, but also the amount of training and confidence that you get
Yes.
if you're new to boating. It's actually something that I work a lot with Short Marine here in Australia. And as a new boat dealership, they provide that for new
Nice.
boat owners, which is amazing and something that's pretty rare in the industry, I think, too. But taking that like golden gem of like, I understand why people either don't get into boating or get out of boating. A lot of that is the kind of confidence part on being able to own and operate and service and all that stuff. So a very cool, I guess, way to help people get into the industry.
Yeah. And maybe I planted a seed, who knows? And I think, it's also a really interesting route for people who live in big cities. I'm in the DC area and we have friends that join a local boat club and they live in a neighborhood where like their house takes up the whole property. There's nowhere to put a boat.
Yeah.
And they're both lawyers. They're crazy, but they have 3 kids. They're activities all the time. So the fact that they can just call up and reserve it and show up and go, it works really, really well for them.
Easy.
So, easy. Yeah.
Get down the barriers to entry. That's awesome. I'd love to know like how you see speaking. So I see you all the time. You're on stages and you're talking on behalf of RBFF. Is that something you always speak at events like that, or?
I do now. I didn't used to. Back in 2019, when I was just, getting out there and trying to get connected, I was terrified to go on stage. And I feel like since then, every bad technical thing that could happen to me has happened. And I just kind of like got used to it. And now I just roll with the punches.
It's just expected. Like
Yeah.
even starting this podcast, we had some technical
Right.
hiccups, but we're both here having a good time.
And now I really love it. I think when I first started doing it, I had this idea that I had to like put on my speaking coat and be different. And once I realized that I'm just up there talking like I'm talking to my friends or talking to my family, like be yourself and be comfortable in it, I started to relax a little bit more.
I love that. Well, that's when people connect to you because it's your authentic self. You're not just putting it on for someone to try to trick them into or trick yourself into being someone else. I think that's wonderful. I think being real is a huge thing, whether it's the content that you're putting out or that, that we're producing as a business or being on stage and connecting with people. That's the best way to do it, I think. About content, it's pretty much at the heart of your mission. It's how you guys at RBFF like help get the message out. A lot of in that how to and where to resources that you guys have. Because I, work in that space, I'm curious how you approach like creating content that connects to new anglers and boaters with that data that you guys get, all those insights. Like,
yeah, it's really quite sophisticated. We used to have a content calendar that was like a Word document with like 12 bullets on it. Now it's this spreadsheet that makes me cross-eyed. But it's a combination of looking at the participation data and understanding what motivates people, right? And creating content that speaks to that. But then we overlay it with insights from search engine, right? So what are people searching for? And how do we create content that taps into that so that when they're on there looking for family activities for the weekend, our fishing and boating content rises to the top? It's really become quite scientific. And what's great in the digital space is like you could put out one thing and you get that instant feedback so you can tweak for the next, right? You're not like waiting the whole summer to get the results of your ad campaign. It's like
exactly. See how many people bought the magazine. Yeah.
Right.
You've seen it when it used to be a certain way and now it's this way. That's very confusing. But also the market's changed a lot, right? In that time and the technology and everything. Sometimes I feel like that can take some of the magic away, maybe from like a project, but also it adds probably a lot of gratification when you do get that feedback so quick and you can really tell that things have made a difference and an impact on your business and what you're trying to do. How do you see it playing? Is it a really, I guess, positive thing for you guys as far as campaigns go, or do you wish it was like the old times where
Well,
you
oh man, so much. I have so much there. It's been super interesting. And I feel like an old lady saying this, but I mean, I was here when we started social media and we didn't know what we were doing. We were just like, Facebook, okay, just put things up there and see what happens. And like I said, now it's like science. It's interesting because there is a science to it and you can get people to connect and get them to come to the site, but you still have to layer in that more traditional storytelling, heart tugging content. I feel like you're shooting yourself in the foot if you go 100% scientific, right? There's still a desire for that. There's still a need for it. But if you're not plugged into some of these other spaces, like that's what's bringing people to the site, right?
and stories connect with everyone. Like people, I think as we get more and more into AI technology influencing a lot more than it does now in our day-to-day life, people are going to look for that authentic connection even more, like in real life versus like just data driven. I know that this is being fed to me because it's exactly what I want to hear. Like the realness, I think, is going to cut through a bit more because I don't know how well we're going to be able to tell the difference between the two. But that's something that I think as humans, and especially being connected to people and the water as that shared interest, that's going to be a big factor in, I think, how people interact with and perceive our brands.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I would say that authenticity is really important to our brand too. And so we do use a lot of like user generated content, or we work with influencers who are really, really authentic because you want people to connect. You want them to identify with the content, right? Ultimately. So the more authentic and real it can be, the better.
Do you have a favorite story that RBFF has shared over the last few years when you've been in the marketing and SVP roles? Like something that you guys have produced that really hit home with you out of all the campaigns over the last few years?
Well, the one that's out right now, like, gets me choked up every time I see it, Second Catch. And it was a play on for Father's Day. What happened was when we did our research of women, I was talking about earlier, to find out like why women who fish, what sets them apart. A lot of women just said like, well, I used to fish with my dad. Used to fish with my dad. We don't really go anymore. And that planted a seed for us. We're like, there's enough people out there who feel this way. We should make a play to try to reconnect dads and daughters on the water. And you've seen the video, obviously. It's a dad and a daughter who she's at that teenage age and starts to lose interest a little bit. And, the sadness kind of grows in the relationship. And there's this part of it where this is the part that gets me. The daughter is walking up the stairs to her bedroom, and the photos up the stairwell are like her life going by in like a second. It's like the soccer and then the high school graduation and then the wedding and then a baby. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, time is fleeting. God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a 14-year-old and I cannot believe how fast it's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm not even the target audience on that one. And it got me choked up.
It is a reminder of how special those times are. And I think to continue, like for me, my girls are still young, Layla's 9 and the oldest. And it was instant like, oh man, I've got to get out there and take them out this weekend. Even though like I don't get a ton of time to go out fishing whether I'm not working.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
being with them is different, but it definitely like sparked the fire. Like, oh, we got to get out there ASAP. The other day I had them casting in the driveway, just practicing their casts. So,
well, yeah, I saw that. I can totally relate because I grew up fishing with my dad. And as adults, like there's a lot we don't agree on. It's a lot of subjects we can't talk about. But when we go fishing together, like none of that matters. It's like, it's all about that adventure of the day. We're on an adventure together. We have a mission to accomplish, and all that stuff gets thrown out, and it's just special.
It is special. No agenda, just having a good time.
Yeah.
Passing the time with someone you love. That's the way it's at.
And those are the memories that stick with me too. Those are the stories I retell, whether you lost the fish or, the adventure.
100%. I'm curious, for leaders that are in the marine marketing space, because you have a lot of experience there, What role, I guess, do you think that that emotional connection part plays in building a memorable brand? Because it's something that I always try to explain. And as I am an emotional guy, it's hard to convey emotions sometimes into words and into business context, going, hey, like this is actually going to make a big difference for you. Not all of it is tangible. There's a lot of intangibles, but overall, I think when you use that emotional connection, it's a big thing.
I think anytime that you can connect with someone with your brand on a personal level, you're going to be more successful. Whether it's you're meeting their needs or you're giving them a helping hand or you're connecting them with a resource in the community. It's all about those personal relationships. And people are motivated to purchase based on emotion, especially these big purchases, right? So anytime you can cater to that, I think is really important.
I agree 100%. Talk to me a little about RBFF and your focus on conservation. What does that look like?
Our mission is to get people out fishing and boating, thereby conserving the natural resources that they're participating on. And there's a couple ways we do that. A lot of people aren't aware that when you buy your fishing license and when you register your boat, you buy fuel for your boat, and when you buy tackle, money goes back into this big pot called the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund. Money gets doled out back to the states to do that important conservation work in your local area. Things like clean waterways, fisheries projects, boat ramp repairs. When you participate, you're actually giving back to the resource that you are participating on.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. 100% of your sea license fees go back to conservation.
Okay. I think that happens here in Australia. I'm not sure, but I wonder how much to the extent that it does, because that sounds like, yeah, amazing thing.
It's like our best kept secret, right? Nobody knows about it. That's a feel good thing. But also, when people come into our website and to our digital properties, we try to educate about the importance of taking care of the environment and being an ethical angler, right? Not holding that fish out of the water for so long it can't breathe anymore. Handling it with your bare hands versus gloves. There's a lot of things that we can do. And we find that people who participate, year over year over year, they naturally become the stewards of the environment, right? They care about it. They care about the fish. They care about the habitat. So as we're creating anglers and boaters, we're creating conservationists as well.
That is awesome. And empowering people, I guess, with that knowledge that they are making a difference by
Yeah.
being out there. It's even more of a great excuse to get out
Yeah.
and have some fun on the water.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Stephanie, I've got some rapid fire questions for you, some fun ones.
I'm scared.
First thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
So, what's your favorite fishing spot or favorite place to go boating?
Favorite fishing spot would have to be Isla Morada, my hometown. Favorite place to go boating is on the Chesapeake Bay.
Oh, yeah. What do you do out there? What do you love about it?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's just so many cool little creeks you can pull into and anchor or go have lunch or just so much adventuring to be done.
What's one piece of career advice that stayed with you that you can remember? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
My grandfather used to always say, the secret to success in life is your ability to adapt to change. Things are always changing and you need to be open to that and roll with it.
Your grandpa was a smart man. That's awesome. If you could take anyone fishing, past or present, who would it be?
I would love to take my grandparents fishing with me.
What would that look like for you?
So my grandparents had a place on Lake Erie when I was little, and they passed before I came back around to fishing and boating. So I never got to enjoy it with them as an adult. And I just think it would be so, so special. I've seen my husband go out with his grandfather, and it just warmed my heart.
You triggered something that had me going back to the reservoir with my grandfather. He used to take me out of school. We'd stop at Stewart's Hot Dogs on the way, and he'd let me drive the truck in the parking lot. And then we'd go and catch some bluegills off the dock at Manasquan Reservoir. So,
what is it with grandfathers? Mine taught me how to drive when I was 13. I was like, I don't want to do this. He's like, you have to learn. I'm like, okay.
It's because they can't get in as much trouble as the parents, I think. What's a book or podcast that you're loving now that you would recommend?
Well, a book I'm reading right now is called People, and it's about culture. in your organization. And that's something I work on now. And it's been very challenging, but also very interesting and rewarding. So I'm really loving that one.
Well, speaking of that, I guess what's one skill that you believe is like essential to be a leader in the marine industry or leading a team?
Relationship building, connecting with people, knowing how to build and maintain relationships, I think is super, super important.
What's your go-to snack when you're out on the water?
Chips.
What kind of chips?
I like all the chips. All the chips are good. Salt and vinegar.
Every
That's my
bag.
favorite.
Yeah. The kettle cooked ones. They're
Oh,
the
yeah.
best.
Crunchy.
Yeah. What's your favorite species to fish for and why?
Oh, there's so many, but probably the one that I'm most proud of is sailfish,
Oh, cool.
because it is just the fight of your life. It's intense. And that moment when they jump out of the water right behind the boat, if you're lucky enough to experience that, and it's you connected to them and the line, it's unbelievable.
I have yet to go sail fishing. I've been marlin fishing plenty of times, but that's on the bucket list. So someday soon.
And I've had the opportunity to watch, like, from the tuna tower when we had a double header. This was in Costa Rica many years ago. And the flashes of blue from their sails are incredible. I mean, talk about nature's beauty. Holy moly.
Also on my bucket list is going to Mag Bay. That would be amazing to see all the sails there and the bait balls and being underwater amongst the seals and everything. Oh, that's stuff dreams are made up for a visual person like myself. Do you have a fishing superstition or ritual?
No bananas.
A classic. We had to look that up on Alexa the other day as to what that actually meant. I don't even think Alexa knew. It was just something.
There's articles about it on takemefishing.org. You can find it.
Is there? Well, look them up. What's one innovation that you'd love to see in the boating or fishing world?
I would love to figure out a way to borrow or check out fishing equipment, like as easy as it is to get an Uber or, get a meal from Farmer's Fridge in the airport. Like, here's my money, give me the stuff. That's what I would love to figure out.
That would be awesome. Delivered in an Uber. Probably around the corner from your fishing spot, so that doesn't give the secret away. But yeah. Who has been a big inspiration or mentor for you in your career?
It's hard to choose one person, but I will say that I've gotten pretty close with a lot of women in the industry, and they continue to inspire me over and over again. I think Michelle Goldsmith is one of these women, and she'll say, we are the mighty 2%, the female portion of the industry. And despite that, we just keep going, we keep innovating, we keep contributing, and I think we're growing as part of the industry. And I love those women, all of those women to death, and appreciate them sort of blazing that trail for others.
That's amazing. And she was integral in the other mentorship opportunity that came up, which is, everyone benefits from. And it's a fantastic thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
What's your recent favorite story or experience that's happened on the water?
A spring break trip I took with my family to Asheville, North Carolina. This was before the hurricane went crazy there. We had booked a fly fishing trip. We're taking my daughter. She's never been. And of course, it was like the worst weather of the entire week. It was raining. It was cold. And we're like, okay, let's go stand in some cold water in the rain. But I ended up catching a trout slam, my first ever. I caught a rainbow, a brown, and a brook. In the rain, in the cold. And then my husband was like, I'm going to keep fishing. And I was like, we're going to go get in the car and warm our feet up. But
I've done my job here. Yeah.
It was a great memory.
How cool. Yeah. Oh, through thick and thin, you made it happen. Very, very cool. I didn't even know a trout slam was a thing, because that's not my fishing world. That's the wonderful thing
I didn't either.
About it, right? Yeah.
I'm newer to the fly fishing side of things, and I've only caught like little guys, but it's hard.
You caught that on the fly.
Yeah.
Man. Props to you.
Thank you.
That's pretty good. Yes. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. I have one little wrap-up question that I think you would be amazing or give some great advice for based on my experience with you. What advice do you have to give people listening or watching to make a meaningful impact in the marine industry? If they're just getting into it or they've been in it in a while, like you're very passionate about what you do, you make a great impact in the industry. in a variety of ways. Like, what do you think people should look for or do to, or try to find to make an impact for themselves or for other people?
Well, fishing and boating are a fantastic industry, right? I think sometimes we have the tendency to become a little insular. And I think we need to be intentional. This is advice I would give anyone about getting outside the box, going to events that are going to broaden your idea of what we could do for fishing and boating, right? What's going to take us to the next level? What's going to help us connect with that new consumer and not always depend on tradition? Be thinking about how we can innovate and grow. I'm a big proponent of continuing education. I would highly recommend everyone invest in that.
Think outside the box, outside the boat. I like it.
Outside
Just
the boat.
go find something new and exciting. That's great because that is, I think, from being newer to the industry, it is a older industry as far as innovation and trying new things goes. It's changed lately, I think, which is amazing. So more of that. Fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie. That's all for us today. You can connect with Stephanie and learn more about RBFF's programs at the links. I'll put them in the show notes. Definitely don't miss out on all those extra resources Stephanie's team put together on takemefishing.org/churn for insights that will definitely help your own business. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Rising Tidecast.